I built this really simple structure behind me about 5 years ago now. It was back in 2018. I was just looking through the old videos. It is a 3-bay firewood shed and storage shed. And after a decently wet and relatively thick snow that came down the other day, I thought it'd be nice to take a look at this structure 5 years later. How's it holding up? And what did it cost? How was it built? What would I do differently? So stick around. This structure lives on the north side of our driveway here, and it's a little bit strategically placed in part. You'll hear why in a moment as cars rush by. It's a nice way to deflect some sound from the road. There's the road over there. It's also a very convenient place to process firewood. I can pull my truck in. This is normally where I park. It's in the shop right now. And so it's easy to take firewood off the truck and load it, or to split. And then it's also not very far from our garage, which is right around over there. And so we can load firewood in with wheelbarrows and into the house and into our living room and burn. So it's got a nice relative location for us. And also as a nursery and a homestead space where we want to grow as much food as possible, the impermeable surface of asphalt is a great place to put infrastructure rather than taking up really nice potential garden space or living and growing space. And so in those ways, I'm very happy with the placement of this structure and how it's performed. This side faces south, so winter and spring and fall, midsummer light comes through. The top is made out of greenhouse poly, which I'll show in a moment, but it allows a lot of light through. The pallet walls that it's framed out with allow a lot of air through. And what's really sweet is that so far over the years, if we get a really windy snow, some snow will blow in there, a little bit of rain if it's extremely violent seeming storms, lots of wind. But by and large, with a good, strong, standard snow, it comes down and it doesn't get in there and the wood stays nice and dry. I won't explain in detail how I built this because I made videos as I went along in that process, and I'll link them here as well in the description that show how this all came together. It's very, very simple structure. We've got 3 basic bays. This is the easternmost. The central bay was meant to be kind of a catch-all. I didn't clean it up to make this video because I might as well have it be realistic as to what it is. We've got some lumber on the side that we use for various projects, some gear for chopping wood and working with that, some tools and some burlap sacks, some seeds that are stored in there. Could be a lot more organized, more elegantly laid out, but it's basically fine enough. And then another side for more firewood. And what's lovely about having 3 bays is that these 2 bays represent the volume of firewood we need for an average winter. It's roughly 2.5 cord of wood fit in the bays, and that's what we consume. Our house is small, and even though it's uninsulated, we make lots of charcoal in our wood stove and we run our stove very effectively. So 2.5 cords gets us through most winters. And so this is the bay that we're currently pulling from for our winter's firewood. You can see I've got my splitting station and my tire, which I talked about recently. We use wheelbarrows to load firewood in and bring into the garage and then walk it the rest of the way into the house. And so when we're not using the wheelbarrows, we can tuck them in here and keep them out of the rain and snow. And then the firewood just stacked in there with the biggest pieces down low and then finer pieces stacked up high. The rack system we use on the bottom underneath each course of firewood, so they're roughly 16 to 18 inches long, we have 2, we'll call them runner boards, and they are like this. We have 2 of these that go under each run of firewood. You can see the one there, and all they are black locust offcuts that we got from a local mill from their waste stream, and we screwed in these little feet. You can see not exactly perfect, but what's nice is having that little loft there is it allows any water to run through. Since we're on a north slope, water definitely wants to run through this space, and it freely can. And most importantly, it also allows air to get underneath all the firewood, come up and move through. And that in combination with greenhouse plastic on the top so light can come in and air being able to move all around on the sides, the back, and also underneath, the firewood dries down incredibly well in this structure. It's very straightforward to build. You can see the pallets that we used here. We live near a place that has exercise equipment, and it comes on these 7.5 foot long pallets. So I went with the truck and picked up a heaping truckload, maybe there's 2 truckloads of these free long pallets, and they basically determined what the structure would be. So it's 2 pallets tall on their sides. It's 1 pallet deep per bay. So we've got 6 of these pallets that run each section, and we went ahead and made the roof out of the pallets as well, because it's basically rafters and purlins in one material. And then what's nice about this is the basic framing, the structural skin is out of pallets, and then we can reinforce them and unify them with some stronger wood. So these are more black locust offcuts from that local mill. And all of that very simply rests on a foundation or a pier of bricks. You can see one here. So there's nothing about this that goes into the earth in any way. The bricks just keep the wood decoupled from the ground, and after 5 winters, none of the pallets are rotting, even though they're just standard pine. They're not pressure treated pine at all. I make sure to keep the snow away a bit, and once the snow starts to fall off this side, you can see it'll slowly slide off the plastic. Once we finally get sun, that'll fall off, and then I'll take the shovel and move it away from the backside. That's all the basic maintenance we need to do. If we get over 1.5 feet or 2 feet of snow, I like to sweep the roof, but by and large, it does a fine job keeping itself clean. The greenhouse plastic, as soon as light hits it, warms up, and it's super slippery, so the snow just sneaks right off. We'll keep dipping in on this side for the rest of this winter. This is wood that we stacked here 2 years ago, so it's had a very long time to season. This is firewood we stacked in the spring of 2022, and we won't start burning that until next fall. And so by having really nicely partitioned future firewood and our firewood now, it really makes it possible to have extremely seasoned wood. If I were to do this again, I would think about, although in our context we maybe don't have the space for it, maybe I would sacrifice this middle space, although we need a little room there, but having 3 bays would be ideal. We could have 1 bay that's filled, that's slowly seasoning, the bay we're actively pulling from for our winter's needs, and then an open bay that we can be refilling with wood if we have access to a windfall of trees, or some deal on Craigslist or something. We could cache more wood, because right now that's completely full, and I certainly don't want to put unseasoned wood right on top of what we're burning. So I think 3 bays would have been better if we had the space for it. A little bonus space on the west side is this wing that holds raw material for us to make charcoal with. And I'll link again here to a video where it talks about that process, and I'll make an update video this winter. But basically, these are offcuts and waste pieces of nuggets of dense hardwood. There's oak and locust in here, and we burn that in stainless steel retorts in a low oxygen environment in our wood stove. It makes charcoal and syngas at the same time that heats us, and the firewood shed, since I knew I wanted to store that kind of material, has that storage baked right into it. I imagine the first place that will have a failure with the structure will be with the greenhouse poly. Maybe a big branch will land on there, or after 6 to 8 years. This is 6mm UV stabilized greenhouse poly that I actually bought from Offcuts from A.M. Leonard. I can link to that in the description. If I were doing this again, I would maybe just make this 2-ply poly from a waste stream from a local farm. We've since building this made connections with farms where we get their waste greenhouse plastic, and we just lay up 2 layers and call it a day instead of putting new plastic up there. And one way to have it last quite a bit longer, you can see I have little sacrificial slices of other scraps of plastic that go over corners where the plastic would otherwise be dealing with. You can see it's a little bit of a sharp point where the wood would dig into it. And so by laying those little sacrificial slices there, I think that helps preserve this plastic quite nicely. I realized I forgot to mention this earlier on in the video, but one of the most compelling aspects of a structure like this, so it holds an entire year's worth of the heat that we need for our home, along with some tools, is a catch-all for a bunch of stuff, kind of a mess, but useful in our context, and another entire year's worth of heat for our home. This whole structure cost me less than $40 to build. It's extremely simple, straightforward carpentry. It's based around the resources and materials that I could find in our local waste stream. So your designs would be influenced by what you can find in a waste stream where you are, or influenced by money that you have available to buy new materials. But that's not my specialty. It's finding stuff and making it work. But yeah, so 5 years and running strong. I don't see any issues in this structure that would make it indicate that it's ready to fall apart. No giving way underneath massive snow loads so far, as long as we sweep it once in a while, and under $40 for that. So if we get a decade out of this for $40, it means $4 a year for storing firewood and tools. So really finding materials in the waste stream and putting them to use is, I would hope people that haven't tried it yet would dip a toe in and recognize just how amazing this way of building is. It just works. Someday it'll really catastrophically fail and we can use the poly that's on the roof. We'll take it off, we'll take the battens off carefully that we screwed it in with and put it into use covering low tunnels or solarizing garden spaces. The pallets we can put to rest in a hedgerow to make debris wall. Since they're heat treated and not pressure treated, they'll just naturally break down. And we'll take all the screws back out. We only use exterior grade PGP screws. You can see one there, hex head T25. Those, after a decade or more, can be walked back out with an impact driver. In fact, I have a little tray of them from past projects that we've taken apart, and they'll be reused for another project. So when this structure finally passes away, it'll leave no nasty mark in the landscape at all, and we can just build again somewhere else. Check out those other videos if you want to see more details on the build, and check out the video where it's finished early on so you can see it looking like a nice, clean, organized space. That's probably pretty fun to see. But here it is, also the reality of what a structure like this becomes and the services it offers. Let me know what sort of questions or concerns or ideas you have. If you have some cool projects made out of reclaimed materials or ethically sourced waste stream materials where you are, share them in the comments. Share a picture or a link to a video or something like that. And let's have more conversation about building the infrastructure we need to be comfortable in our life without it costing a lot of money. That's going to only become more increasingly important over time. Thanks for watching.